My next guest is a custodian of the English language and therefore is the best qualified person to run Bloomsbury Publishing, the company that he founded in the 1980s. It listed in the 1990s, and let me bring you, let's fast forward, because the last 5 years the share price has risen some 160%. Now, this is the company that took a punt on J.K. Rowling when really it was mainly academic in so many ways. Now it is a fusion of fiction and non-fiction, and when I last visited Nigel's offices, national treasure Sheila Hancock was there discussing the paperback release of her very successful hardback. I am delighted to be joined by Nigel Newton, who was recently awarded a CBE for services to the publishing industry and to literature, and I understand that's the honour just below a knighthood. There's still time, Nigel. There's still time. So Bloomsbury, a multifaceted, many-authored creation of beauty, and it's now being described as the Netflix of the arts, humanities, and social sciences world. How many layers does the company actually have at the moment? Because some people might not understand my reference to Netflix.
How many layers?
How many layers?
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much, Sarah, and good afternoon to you all, and thank you very much for coming along. We're divided into two principal pillars of publishing aimed at the consumer audience, books that you would buy in bookshops, and then an academic and professional division. So that sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? But it isn't. It's fantastically exciting because it's created a huge commercial edge for us. All of our competitors are siloed into either being aimed at the consumer, and these are famous great publishing houses like Penguin Random House, Hachette, HarperCollins, and Macmillan, or they are aimed at university students and researchers like Oxford University Press, Cambridge, and the big information giants, Taylor and Francis Informa, Reed Elsevier, the biggest company in our industry. But what we decided about 15 years ago is that 5 of the 7 skills that you need to publish a book are identical between academic and general. The contracting side, the sales side, the production side. It's only the editors and the marketing who are different. So what did we do? We used the money that we had made from a very big success in children's publishing to buy about 30 academic lists and publishing houses, and we now do both, and they march to a different drummer. So the high points of the general books year are Christmas and summer reading. The high points of the academic year are back to university in September and October, and financial year ends as libraries have to spend all their budgets. So we've accidentally created the perfect portfolio with balance against the vicissitudes of fickle public taste.
So you mentioned the success of a certain children's book. It was Harry Potter. And I think one of the early criticisms of your company was that you had £100 million in your Royal Bank of Scotland account, and it was taking you a long time to spend that money, but you did it judiciously, slowly. And now it seems as though you're on steroids. The company is not it's throwing off money. It's not throwing away money, it's throwing off cash.
Well, it is true. We took some flack from some institutional shareholders who said, your balance sheet is inefficient. You've got this cash sitting there uninvested. But we reminded them of other public companies who'd spent their windfalls quickly. I think Marconi was a a famous example of this and got into a lot of trouble. So the truth is, we spent 20, from their point of view, agonizing years spending that 100 million and did buy 30 companies. And because we got almost each one right, they're now producing terrific long-term returns and in turn creating a new cash problem. And so we continue with further acquisitions.
So you talk about cash problems and terrific. I mean, you really are terrific in the way that you look after your shareholders in terms of dividends. I heard just half an hour ago that you're a dividend aristocrat.
Apparently. Yes, some of you will know this better, but I think it's if you grow your dividend for 25 years, you are a dividend aristocrat. Obviously, as an American, you know, Downton Abbey, I always wanted to be an aristocrat. No, so seriously, that has been our thing, has been the growth in the dividend.
So there is another criticism, and that's one that you have of the market, which is that surely the market should be re-rating the stock, but you don't feel as though they're factoring in all the different layers that your company has.
Well, it's up to us to get that message across, so be the first people to hear it today. So there are essentially two different ways of rating a publishing company, and a lower multiple will paradoxically always apply to things aimed at consumers because of the fickle nature of the high street. I say curiously because as the publisher of Harry Potter, I think we showed that consumer books can really fly and keep flying 25 years later. But academic publishing, information publishing, has a much higher rating, partly because a lot of the income is subscription. We sell digital resources to the 5,000 or so academic research libraries around the world on a monthly subscription basis to be plugged into things like the Churchill Archive online. It's not a website. You can't just go and read the 800,000 pages written in Churchill's lifetime. It even includes his cigar and wine receipts. But it also has telegrams from Churchill to the Prime Minister of Canada, thanking him for another 15 Lancasters that were delivered. You only get this in 1941. You only get this information if you, say, you're Princeton University, you pay £50,000 to be plugged into this. So we all know that subscription income, you mentioned Netflix, I warmed at the comparison. I'm not sure it's accurate, but thank you. Of having this steady income coming in predictably. We have over 90% renewal rates for those annual subscriptions. So I think the market will get this message that our PE should be closer to that of big information companies than big consumer companies. But the choice is yours.
So talk to me about the consumer side, because during lockdown and all the miserable news that we're having about pestilence in the Ukraine, a lot of people escaped into books, and particularly the fantasy genre. So Sarah J. Maas, apart from us having a superb Christian name, what is it that she brings to the reader and to the company?
Well, Sarah J. Maas is probably the most exciting new author in the world at the moment. She's written 15 novels, but I'm willing to guess not a single one of you have heard of her. Will anyone dare to raise their hand if they've heard of her? You've got your finger on the pulse. A bottle of champagne to this man in the second row, please. So Sarah J. Maas is a young American writer who one of our editors in New York picked up looking at self-published internet sensations, found a big following for her. Most self-published authors, or many of them, would like to be with a well-known publisher if they can. And 15 books later, they all go to number one immediately on the New York Times bestseller list, the Sunday Times bestseller list, Sydney Morning Herald, and in India as well. So why haven't you heard of her? Because she has quite a precise market. I guess it's called young adult, late teens, early 20s, and these people are absolutely addicted to these 3 different series. So we've just signed a new contract with Sarah J. Maas for a further 4 books on top of the 3. So even if you haven't heard of her, believe me, she's good news for shareholders.
So from fantasy to science fiction to reality, and this is where I talk to you about GPT. I'm just wondering what the implications of artificial intelligence for the creative economy. So chatbots, how will they impact an industry that relies on human creativity and imagination? Should we be afraid? Should authors be afraid of ChatGPT?
Well, my message is essentially positive because there are many functions in a publishing company, such as the production of marketing materials, even arguably the writing of books themselves, that can be done by AI. I was talking to someone who's worked in AI for 15 years, and I said, well, what do you think? Isn't this great? And he said, well, no, it isn't. We're all going to die. And he outlined 4 very credible scenarios of what AI could do to kill the human race quite soon. So unless we control it. So my feelings are very ambivalent. I'm very positive indeed for its commercial applications. But when you get the chief executive of ChatGPT himself saying, as he did, I think, in a statement about a week ago, that he's frightened by it, we all ought to be frightened by it, and by the sheer speed of it, because I'm guessing that, like me, you'd never heard of ChatGPT was only launched in November, and now it's all anyone talks about. I have used it to write. I was at a reunion of a class reunion, and I asked it to write the speech for it, and it was so much better than my own. I asked it to write the history of Bloomsbury, which I know something about, and its only boo-boo was it attributed George Orwell as one of, I think he even helped me start the company. So AI does have, they call them hallucinations, where it just says silly things, but basically it's frighteningly good.
We have 2 minutes left. Who would like the honour of asking Nigel Newton a question? Yes, so if you can hand.
We're very ecological here. We're sharing the microphone.
Thank you. You talked about having 2 sides to your business, the consumer side and the academic side. Can you talk a bit about the sort of relative sort of profit margins on each side? I mean, which is the more profitable side for you?
It's a great question, because the margins are higher in academic publishing. There's less waste. You know how many students of architecture there are, and you can print the books where you do print them more accurately. You can buy mailing lists. So the whole thing is much more organized. And they did, of course, more or less invent the internet, academics. So they're way ahead digitally. So it is inherently more profitable, and that is why a higher rating is received by the Reed Elsevier's and Informers. However, consumer publishing can expose you to the explosive upside potential of big hits. And you might have a really, really big hit once every 5 years. So what we do is essentially exactly what all of you are doing, which is portfolio management. And in the general side of the business, we have out of 10 books, 7 that do about what you thought, 1 that's a total disaster, and then 2 that are way better, 1 of which is way, way better. And you don't know what that's going to be, because all you can know is if it's good, then you're in the fickle hands of fate. And it is very, very exciting when a book takes off unexpectedly. I mean, Harry Potter, we knew it was a great book, but we were the only publisher out of 12 to offer for it, and we paid £2,500. So it's not as though there are certainties, but then when they go, they really go. So I think we're the perfect publishing company because we counterbalance explosive upside potential, yes, and disaster. We have plenty of that too. You should see our warehouse, but with the steady earnings of academic publishing. And that was why we invested the money in academic instead of more in trade. We wanted to even out the portfolio.
We are overrunning, I'm afraid.
Sorry.
But if you could have written any book, which one would it have been?
Well, my favorite Bloomsbury novel is The English Patient by Michael Ondaatje. I'm sure if you haven't read the book, which won the Man Booker Prize book of all time, you might have seen the movie with Ralph Fiennes and Kirsten Scott Thomas. So that's the book I admire the most. My favorite book as a child was Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Did you know Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was written by Ian Fleming? Isn't that a strange thought? The creator of James Bond. Macho Man also created one of the greatest children's stories of all time.
Lovely. There you go. I told you your day was going to get lovelier. We all say a big thank you to Nigel Newton, the founder and chief executive of Bloomsbury Publishing. Thank you.